I guess it's time for another rant from the dangerous dinosaur. Um, Hope all you people are awake and well and in good spirits. And I'm tired. Anyway, had another shooting. And the press has hopped up about gun control and things like this. And every lobbyist, every politician, everybody with something to gain has a pet peeve and a pet project. You got a whole bunch of people want to control guns. You got a bunch of people want to take away guns. You got a bunch of people that want to have registration of gun owners. You have a lot of people that want to do investigations, background checks, things like this, all based on the fact or on the initial premise that a lot of the shooters in some of these mass cases are nutcases. Crazy, insane, whatever. Those of us that have studied the situation for a few decades have different views also. And nobody can really decide about causation or prevention or anything such as that. I know a lot of money went into the research of the phenomenon after the Columbine shooting. University of Colorado, where I was at the time, did some research. I recall a book written right before that during the Reagan administration called Going Postal. And the researcher there saw that the idea or thought of mass shootings by disgruntled employees first started being reported under the Reagan administration. And he had a theory about alienation that actually made a little sense. It used to be you had a time for employees to go until employers became ultra paranoid with trade secrets and protection and crap like this. So it used to be, well, strike that. What a lot of people don't realize is that the primary friendship groups that people belong to nowadays are work groups. People make friends at work, their lives become part of their work becomes part of their lives. It's part of their society, part of their friendships, part of their connections, part of their lives. So what happens when you take an employee and he's made friends among his peers, they go out bowling together, they go out drinking together, or whatever, and he comes to the office one day and he's met by security guards. He's not allowed to go back to his office. They packed up his stuff. They escort him off the premises. He doesn't get to say goodbye. There's no closure. This is like tearing part of his life out. So we gain a little bit in security. We gain some fact that maybe he didn't screw with the computer. If you assume everybody's an asshole and a bad guy, I suppose that's good policy. But if you don't assume that, it's bad policy, because what you've done is you've caught your employer off, you've pissed him off, you've alienated him, and you've maybe caused delayed stress syndrome if his job had a lot of stress to it. And we see this a lot going on. We saw it in the Columbine thing. We saw it in the alienation. And I noticed when a family member had an incident involving police and a crime, and every group in the world wanted to use her as a mascot for this change, that change, or the other change. Nobody really cared about her as such. They wanted her to use as a symbol. And symbols are becoming too much the mode right now of communication rather than reality. So let's take Columbine and the other shootings. We have got all kinds of people saying the answer to this is gun control, the answer to that is gun control, registration, all kinds of remedies, but nobody going to the cause. Now, for a few decades, I have done peer review for an international drug policy journal. And as such, I've read studies, particularly about drug policy, but other policies from all over the world. And one of the things that makes the United States unique from the rest of the world on policy is the fact that most of the world has evidence-based policy. We don't in the United States. We have public relations backed policy. Our policy is directed by politicians' reactions to publicity. So, for instance, if this event occurs, the press gets wind of it, they make a big deal out of it, and you have specialized laws like Anna's laws, Joe's laws, Jim's laws, Angie's laws, pertaining to certain things, commemorating their tragedies and commemorating memorials to their lives, deaths, or whatever. This is great. It's good PR, you know. You got all these politicians say, I can feel your pain, etc., which is absolute bullshit. They don't really care about anything other than themselves, but it's a good play. So you have an incident like Columbine. We have Klebold and the other guy. They were ostracized. They had no real roots. They had no ties. They were alienated, and they were treated as alienated. They weren't part of the cliques in high school. They weren't part of the jocks. They were made fun of, etc. Well, to me, it was inevitable they're going to take a gun to their own heads or to somebody else's, just in frustration. That was a perfect thing to study and everything, but what happens is we have got so indoctrinated by psychologists and the fact we're looking at personal flaws that we ignore real research and real causation. I'm going to digress here for a minute. I was in graduate school. Undergraduate school, I studied criminology. Graduate school, I did a broader area of social science, sociology, and social policy, large-scale organization, things such as that. One of the things that I got really interested in was social policy and postmodern social theory, along with research, etc. And one of the things this country doesn't do is research things the way they should. So, for instance, when the Vietnam War came along, the research money in sociology dried up. And sociology was the study of causation of crime. We gathered data on what was causation, what ameliorated, corrections was part of the curriculum. Social psychology was part of the curriculum, things such as social worker. A social work curriculum was part of it. If you're a corrections officer, you tried to determine what caused the person to be in prison in the first place or be a miscreant in the first place and come up with some sort of design to solve it. Well, when Nixon got in, they chopped all that research out, and they really didn't give a shit what caused crime. What they wanted to do is figure out what to do with it. So criminology fell by the wayside, and a brand new field opened up called criminal justice. And criminal justice had nothing to do with research or anything else. It was essentially, how do you make arrests? How do you successfully prosecute? And how do you lock up more people more efficiently? Screw causation, it doesn't matter. Screw corrections, that doesn't matter. We want to make everybody safe, or at least feel safe, even if they aren't safe. If we can give them the propaganda that this is going to make them safe and they don't have to worry about random acts of violence, then we've succeeded. So let's not spend a lot of money on research. Let's spend the money on propaganda, public relations, etc. And let's pay a lot of money to stupid legislators, congressmen, etc., and push our agenda. And while we're at it, let's sell our excess weapons. So all of a sudden, we just become the armament depot for police. And we arm the police, and we We make them more military because then they can buy more military weapons. It's become a racket. My younger brother was part of a group called Blue Light. He started out as a Green Hornet and then Blue Light, and it was Special Operations Group. And they got co-opted by the Green Beret types and the Special Forces types. So one of the things he did when he retired was go around the country telling American Legion posts and Veterans Group, don't hire people like me. I'm trained to kill people and not do law enforcement. Well, then you had the Rambo types saying, we want to win the next war. We got to win everything. We got to have a war on crime. Give us enough machine guns, grenade launchers, etc., and we'll kill all the commies and we'll kill all the bad guys and we'll make you safe. And then let's have universities do safety checks to say what campuses are safe, what campuses you can send your kids to, so you don't have to worry about random acts of violence. And if you do have random acts of violence, then we'll kill them and you don't have to worry anymore. Meanwhile, all the research on what causes this is not funded. It's lock up more people, make more people safe. Let's do a public relations campaign on safety and, forget causation because nobody gives a damn anyway. Secondly, research on that is costly. Now, I'll give you an example. When I was undergraduate school, they had a study out of University of Chicago. And it was concentric thing theory by Burgess, Shaw, Parks, Burgess, and Shaw. And it said the crime rates in a certain area in Chicago never varied no matter who was there, what ethnic group was there. There was a place that ethnic groups from various immigration and migration things that happened in the country where they ended. And the crime rates went down the further away from the epicenter you went. And it went in various concentric rings. So you had the downtown area that was really crime-ridden, and you went out to Winnetka where there was very little crime at all. So there was a correlation between various things. And they studied the correlations, came up with big economic factors, status factors, all kinds of different factors. But the main factor was the constant rate and the causation. So what was unique about the first ring, the epicenter that was different from all the others? And they studied that. You had a good model for causation of crime. Well, the psychologist thing took over, and they said, well, there's no such thing as a social economic reason for crime. It's because these are bad people. So let's get the bad people. Let's identify the bad people. Let's identify the people that have their wires crossed in the brain, because that's really what the cause is. And they sold that to the public because it's easier to blame it on individuals than it is on society. Because if you blame it on society, then you got to correct society. If you blame it on individuals, you just put the individual away and say we did our job and we're just waiting for the next individual to crop up that we can shoot, kill, or put away. And that's the answer to crime in the United States, which is a half-assed way of doing things. What you really got to do is figure out what it is in these criminal-centric areas and what makes them different and what makes the people different there. And you got to realize that reality is socially constructed, and what is the reality that's constructed in these areas, and see if we can alter that reality so we get a different result. So we have to understand cultures, we have to understand causality and things like this. We can't just say this guy's a nutcase, that guy's a killer, etc., and expect things to be different. It's insane. It's when you do the same thing, making the same mistakes, expecting different results. That's the definition of insanity, and that's what we are. So, why do we have these things? What causes them? And will stopping guns, legislating guns, etc., stop it? Well, you got to look at it as a cultural thing. So when you compare the United States with other civilized countries, they don't have this type of problem. And it's not because they do or don't have guns. You go to the Middle East, everybody's got a gun there. So what is it about the United States that makes us a little bit more prone to mass shootings and things like this? I think we ought to study that. It's interesting that over the years, we've come around to have environmental impact statements for new laws. If we do this, we build a dam, we change the course of a river, we piss in a stream. What's the environmental impact? How's it going to affect people? Not once have we even seen a proposal for a societal impact study. What happens when you isolate society? What happens with this? What happens with that? I'm reminded when I was in graduate school, there was a person I wanted to study under at Wisconsin named Marshall Clenard, and he did his dissertation on the sociology of taverns. It was 9 volumes. It was quite a lengthy thing. But what he found out was taverns were a place where society built. They built consensus. They built friendship groups. They built communications group. They were necessary to community developments. So what do? We get a group called MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, because somebody's kid got killed. I wish they'd have been around in the Vietnam War. You could have Mothers Against War. Maybe we'd have stopped it sooner. But Mothers Against Drunk Driving, they pick out a target. Somebody's had a drink. Let's make an example out of them. Let's do justice by targeting. We don't have individual examples. We're going to teach them a lesson. We're going to give society a message. We're going to send us a message to society. We don't like drunks. Well, that depends on interpretation. Unfortunately, the Mothers Against Drug Drivers are generally middle and upper middle class women that are active in country club groups and things like this. Rich women that can raise lots of money to fight things that they can feel worthwhile about. And you might as well call them Mothers Against Peasants, because that's what it really affects. You think of the impact of a drunk driving charge and what it costs, and what they've done is they've turned it into a racket, and it's real costly for people. And they don't do it on a sliding income scale; they do it on a per capita scale. So you get the construction worker that works part-time or maybe full-time but doesn't make that much money. He's got this kind of cost, that kind of cost, blood testing, piss testing, counseling, all of it done by private industry that contracts with the government, that gets to impose its will on the peasantry, on the poor people, and they can keep them coming back until they pay all these fines and things such as this. Well, it seemed to me, if drug driving is such a bad thing, and controlling it for society is such a good thing, why doesn't society fund all these programs instead of making the poor people pay more and keep punishing them and kicking them while they're down? Where I grew up, we had playground etiquette, and this wasn't what you did on the playground. You didn't kick people while they were down. This was something that bullies did, and generally the bullies didn't come from lower class people. They came from middle class and upper middle class people because they thought their shit didn't stink. Anyway, that's the state of affairs. We don't have impact statements of how this affects the population. What I can say from my own experience is I started drinking when I was 16 in high school. I didn't get drunk. I didn't get inebriated that much. Occasionally I did. If I did, I didn't drive. But that's beside the point. My clientele, by and large, I met at various bars or coffee shops. That's how I got clients. I didn't advertise. I was against advertising. I'm the old-fashioned lawyer. I think it's unethical to advertise. Besides which, I believe that clientele I would get by advertising aren't the clients I'd want in the first place. So we don't have impact statements at all of the policy. What has the drunk driving laws cost us societally as far as social cohesion, social integration, things such as this? We don't know. What about drugs? Well, I'll tell you one thing. In Colorado, when I was going to school here, you could drink beer at 18. Nobody really got drunk on beer. You threw up first. And nothing could be worse than to be out on a date, drink a lot of beer, and throw up all over. I was told by some of my dates that was disgusting. I wasn't in any condition to really know, but I imagine it would be. But it was almost impossible to drive drunk while 3-2 beer. We did a lot of crazy things and used drinking as an excuse, but it didn't cloud judgment that much. And then they did away with 3-2 drinking, 3-2 beer, and went to hard liquor where you had to be 21. Well, what happened then is a lot of entrepreneurs manufactured false IDs and they cracked down on it. And at that time, all of a sudden, marijuana became available. And you didn't have parties where people sat around drinking beer, exchanging ideas, exchanging politics, exchanging experiences, making friends, etc. You had a bunch of hippies hiding out in cellars and various places by themselves smoking dope to get high. And you didn't have the communal experience then. So that's kind of destroyed or helped destroy social fabric. And I think we ought to look at social fabric and start looking at it, because that is one of the big things that's being destroyed and one of the big things that is causing a lot of stuff to get screwed up. And that's enough for right now. I've got other comments I'm going to make later. Hope you enjoyed it. Please like my program. Please subscribe. Please make comments. I am getting some funded on doing a social history of drugs and drug policy for Colorado from the 1960s on. I need viewers, readers, fans, etc. in order to help with that funding. Hopefully we'll have some scripts and I'll do more than just ad-lib thoughts and random ideas. And I thank you for watching.